Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Anastasia. I am a senior teacher and a methodologist at Green Country School and TalkEn.Cloud. I am pleased to be here with you. Can you please write in chat if you can hear and see me well? I see your responses in chat. Thanks a lot. I see that we've got people from different cities around Ukraine and even around the world. That's amazing. That's wonderful. So I hope that you're ready for today's webinar, which is going to be about reflective thinking and the importance of it. But before we start, I would like to touch upon some organizational moments. So let me begin the presentation. Okay, just a second. Great. So I would like to discuss some organizational moments regarding the certificates and how you can get them. The steps that you should have followed before this webinar and the steps that you should follow after this webinar to get a certificate. So let's take a look. First of all, after registering for this webinar, you should have received the letter with the payment details for the certificates. After that, you should have paid for the certificate and you should have sent the receipt to this email. If you haven't done it yet, please do it. I guess that you still have some time if you want to get the certificate. If you are a partner from Engine, the certificate is free of charge for you. So you don't have to pay for anything. All of the instructions are presented on the letter. The next step, which is required to be completed after this webinar. So after the webinar, you will receive the link to complete the test. And if you get more than 80 points, the certificate will be sent to your email. If you have any issues with the certificates, you cannot download it, or you cannot open it, or you didn't receive it, write the letter to this email, please. And they will try to help you and find a solution to your problem. So I will get back to this information at the end of the webinar, and I will remind it to you one more time. And now let's begin. So since our webinar is going to be about reflective thinking, I suggest that we begin with a warm-up, which is going to be kind of a practice. And so let's think and share our experience in chat, experience related to teaching, of course. So let's look at these questions. I will present my examples and then I will wait for your responses in chat. So the first one, can you think of the moments you're proud of? For example, I'm proud of being able to understand my students' needs. What about you? Can you write in chat what you're proud of? I'm waiting for your responses. Write your answers in chat. Let's share with each other our teaching experience. Good. Okay, after that, let's think of the problems that we have or something that we struggle with. For example, I struggle with understanding my students' emotions. It happens mainly because I work online, I teach online, and when my students do not turn on their cameras, it's kind of difficult to understand how they feel, what they're going through. So that's my challenge. Yeah, I keep struggling with it. What about you? Okay, I see your responses about your successes, about something that you're proud of. Good. That's something positive. Okay, and let's talk about something that you would like to learn or something that you would like to improve. For example, I would like to learn how to work with students with dyslexia because that's something that we all need to know, in my opinion. Yeah. So, waiting for your answers, please write what you're proud of, what do you struggle with, and what would you like to improve. Let's share our experience and maybe some recommendations. Okay, I see your responses. I'm thankful for you answering my questions. That's good. Let's keep it going. Okay. Okay, somebody struggles with student silence. Struggles working with vocabulary, grammar, yeah. Doing the homework assignments. Okay. And what about something that you would like to improve? I guess that if you have a particular problem, right? If you struggle, for example, with teaching vocabulary, that is something that you would like to work on, yeah, to improve. Good. So thank you for your responses. And now let's reflect on the task that we have just completed. So I have prepared a checklist, and I would be really glad if you could answer my questions in chat. So let's analyze it. Did this task activate your thinking skills? If yes, how did it activate them? So I think that it activated my thinking skills because when preparing when writing my answers, yes, when preparing my examples, it made me think of what I have already achieved, something that I still struggle with, and something that I would like to learn. It made me analyze my work as a teacher. What about you? Did this task activate your thinking skills? Let's move on to the next question. Was this task aimed at making you self-reflect and self-evaluate yourself? As for me, I guess, yes, of course, definitely, because I had to analyze my actions, my work, and I had to reflect on everything, yeah. Okay, and the last task, how do you feel after completing this task? So, do you feel like sad that you have a lot of problems that you still struggle with, or you feel a bit motivated because you have thought about your achievements, something that you're good at, something that you're proud of, and it made you feel even to be proud even more, yes, and it made you move forward and improve and achieve better results. Yeah, somebody says that I feel more aware of how I teach. That's right. I like this response. Okay, what about others? How do you feel? Can you share, please? Anxious. Why? Okay, just a few seconds more and we will move on. Good. So, mhm. Thank you for your responses. So this was an example, like a quick sample of a reflective activity. So we're going to practice a lot today, and we're going to learn different techniques and strategies how to activate our students' reflective skills. But before that, let's find out what reflective thinking is. Let's define it, yeah? So reflective thinking is a part of the thinking process that focuses on analyzing and drawing conclusions regarding past actions. That's a general definition, but in terms of teaching, reflective thinking refers to teachers encouraging students to always reflect upon the information they have and what they still need to obtain. It's about us teachers helping our students to find ways to constantly reduce this gap throughout the learning process. And we should understand that an ability, the need to reflect is in our nature, yes? We as human beings are inclined to reflect on our actions. And as teachers, we need to understand it and provide opportunities for our teachers to reflect. But in order to make it possible, we need to face the reality, which is the following. So the reality is that our students are naturally curious, especially if we work with young learners, yeah, with kids. They always ask different questions, this like why this, why not, why can't I do this? So they want to know a lot. They're eager to discover something new. And we need to keep it in mind, and we need to find a way to keep this curiosity in learning without squashing it and killing students' creativity. What I mean by this is that we as teachers often stick to our lesson plan. Yeah, we try to follow the stages, the activities that we have on the lesson plan. We try to manage our time in order to do everything that we have planned. And sometimes by doing that, we forget to find time for something interesting. We forget to find time to foster our students' curiosity, and we just stopped. Yeah. So after doing after doing a task, your students have some questions, or you're in the middle of a heated discussion with your students, and they start asking questions, or they start suggesting new ideas. But then you look at the lesson plan, you look at the timer, and you understand that you're running short of time, that you don't have time for this curiosity, you don't have time for their reflection, and it's time to move on and do a gap fill exercise, yeah? So you just stop them, you say, okay, great, now let's do this task, let's fill in the gaps. And it's demotivating, it doesn't encourage their curiosity, and there is nothing to reflect on. So we need to be able to nurture this curiosity, to go not only at the beginning of the lesson or at the beginning of the activity, but throughout the lesson and at the end of the lesson as well. And it means that we need to allow our students to go beyond the limits of the task, the limits of the activity that we have planned. We need to allow them to use their critical thinking and thus ability to self-reflect. So, and I would like to ask your opinion regarding one phase. So, we as teachers need to understand the importance of reflection. So let's look at this quote. So John Dewey says that we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on our experience. So what do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Can you please write your opinion in chat and say why? I would like to know your opinion. Then I will provide an example. I will We will analyze one situation and then we will draw the conclusion all together. So write in chat whether you agree or disagree with this quotation. And if you agree, can you specify? Can you explain why? Okay, waiting for your answers. Some people agree. Just a few more seconds and then we'll move on. And we will look at the example. Somebody says that we learn from both. Okay, what else? Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for your answers. Now let's look at the example. Let's look at this situation. So this is Sophia. In her typical school day, she bounces from one experience to the other. She begins the day with an engaging experience in her math class. Then she bounces to an English lesson where she learns new grammar. Later in the day, she bounces into a science lab where she wonders about the nature of chemical reactions. Each experience here presents opportunities for her to build new knowledge, skills, and dispositions. By the end of the day, she heads off to bed after her busy day of experiences, and she awakes with her mind clean, ready for another day of experiences. What's the problem here? Does she have time to reflect on her experience throughout the day? Does she have time to analyze the information in order to perceive it better and remember it better? No, she doesn't yet because she bounces from one experience to another. She just practices it, but she doesn't have time to analyze, to reflect on it. And it leads us to such conclusions that the experience alone does not necessarily lead to learning. It's the reflection that makes sense of the experience to us. And when we reflect on our experience, it makes this experience meaningful for us. When we analyze our actions, we analyze the material and its relevance, how we can use it in our everyday life, it makes sense. We understand that it's important, that we need to learn it because it can be useful in our lives. Okay, so let's look at the importance. So we've discussed that both the experience and reflecting on the experience are important. They are connected. And what about the importance of reflection? Why is it important to introduce reflection into our classes? Can you write in chat your ideas, please? Why is reflection important? What do you think? How do our students benefit from it? What can they achieve if they reflect on their experience? Waiting for your answers in chat. Yeah, it helps us think of how we can improve. Agree. What else? We analyze our knowledge, right? Yeah, great. I totally agree. So let's take a look. So first of all, reflection helps our students become more resilient. So if we define resilience, is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. So when our students are able to reflect, it means that they can analyze. And when they analyze their mistakes, they analyze their experience, they can realize what's not working and why it's not working. And when they realize it, they are able to find solutions to these problems. They're able to improve. And when they find solutions on their own, they become less dependent on us teachers. Yeah, so they are able to do it on their own individually and find a way out of the situation. Yeah. The second is that reflection strengthens our students' grit, and we get students that have passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Yeah. So when students have the ability to reflect, it means that they can think of how they can improve or what they can do better this way or the other way in long term. And this ongoing reflection makes us the long-term learners. Yeah, that's what we want from our teachers, from our students, to be the long-term learners, to learn all the time, to discover something new, to improve, to become better, to be well-developed human beings. Yeah, and last but not the least, reflection helps our students become autonomous learners, and it helps them to take responsibility for their learning. So the students themselves are responsible for their actions because they know what they're doing, because they can reflect on it, they can see the progress, they can see in which direction they are moving. And I see some other responses. That reflection helps us understand students' reaction. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. They see results, they set new goals. That's right. I agree. I agree with you. So let's move on. So we have discussed the importance of reflection. And let's think of when we can introduce reflection into our classes. Is there a perfect moment for it? What do you think? Do we need to wait for a perfect moment to introduce reflection? What do you think? When is it better to introduce reflection, to do a reflective task? Is there perfect time for this? No. At the end of the lesson towards the, okay. Yeah, so reflection can be introduced at different stages of the lesson of our learning process, not the lesson itself. And we as teachers need to feel it when it's better to introduce to do this reflective activity, because we work with our students, we interact with them on daily basis, and we need to understand when they need this reflective activity. Yeah, but usually we can do it before something important at the beginning of the term, or before the beginning of a new topic, during something, during in the middle of a learning process, I would say, and after a learning experience. So let's look at these stages in details. So let's take a look. So when we introduce a reflective activity before a new unit or a new topic, we ask students to run through what they already know about this topic and to share it with us teachers or with their classmates in order to make our students be aware of the knowledge they already have and the gaps they need to cover or the moments they need to work on and improve. And it gives us it gives understanding not only for them but for us teachers too, what we need to work on, yeah, in this unit, for example. Then we can also do a reflective task before starting doing a particular task, whether it is writing a paper or solving a problem or doing a project. It provides us an opening to assess our students' understanding, to check whether they understand the activity or not, and it simultaneously reinforces the connection between the learning process and its practical use, and it makes our students understand why it is useful, why they need to do this task, yeah, how they can later use this knowledge in their everyday life. Then, if we move on to the next stage, it's conducting reflection in the middle of something important, in the middle of a learning process. So sometimes we give our students some ongoing projects, the project that they need to work on throughout the semester or something that they need to learn throughout the semester. And it can be useful if we find time in the middle of the semester, for example, to reflect on what they have already achieved, on how they're coping with this project, whether they're moving in the right direction or they need a bit of help to enhance their knowledge in a particular sphere, and so on. So this recurring reflection throughout the semester, yeah, on their own or with a teacher becomes a way for students to become more conscious about the learning process. And a perfect example for this is a checklist with can-do statements, yeah, that we as teachers usually apply in the middle of the term, yeah. So you can give a checklist to your students with can-do statements. I can talk about myself, or I can write a semi-formal letter, I can write a cover letter, or I can respond to different news, I can negotiate something, I can take part in the debates, I know how to use the first conditional, and so on. And let them reflect on what they know, what they don't know, what they're good at, what they're bad at. Then, after the reflection that happens after a particular task or a discussion of a new topic, this reflection allows students to assess their own understanding of the material. So when they have finished discussing, it's kind of like a feedback that we provide for our students, feedback on content, in order for them to understand that they have actually understood what they were doing in this task. So it gives them a chance to think about how this material might relate to other material, other topics that they have studied, and how it might relate to the experience that they have already lived through. And apart from reflecting on a particular material, a particular topic, we can also reflect on a learning experience as well. So we can ask such questions as, what was the most effective thing in helping our students understand the topic? Was it when the teacher restated the main points, or when visual aids were introduced, or when students did hands-on work applying the ideas, or when they debated the topic? Yeah, so we ask them what was the most effective thing that helped them understand the material. Yeah, and in such way, we understand whether they have covered the topic or not, and it gives you understanding in which direction you need to move on further, what you need to do next. So we have we have discussed at which stages, we can introduce reflection, and what do we need to consider when introducing a reflective activity? What is important to know? How can we prepare for a reflection task? What do you think? What do we need to consider? Okay. So what do you think? What do we need to consider before conducting a reflective activity? Students' current knowledge, difficulty of tasks. Yeah. So let's take a look. So first of all, we need to make sure that we give students enough time to analyze all aspects of a question given to them before asking them to answer. So when you give them a question, it will be a reflective question to reflect upon their experience, upon the topic that they have just covered. Give them some time to think, because if you give them 30 seconds and they need to outline what they're good at, what they struggle with within 30 seconds, it might not be enough, because they need to dig deeper. They need to think of what they can and cannot do. Yeah. The next thing that we need to constantly assess learning situations in order to determine what the students already know, what they need to know, and what they learned from the whole experience. So this step is mainly about reflection that we as teachers do. Yeah, we reflect on our work as teachers, on how we teach, how we present the material, whether whether students are able to understand this material or not. Yeah. The next one, it's necessary to provide support to students and encourage them to constantly analyze and evaluate their conclusions. Because if you just leave it to them, and if you rely on their ability to reflect, they won't do it. They need to be pushed, but gently. Yeah, they need some support, emotional support. They need to be praised. They need to understand that it's okay to talk about what they cannot do, to express their emotions. Yeah, you need to encourage them to do that, because they won't do it on their own. So it's also important to give them tasks that they are likely to encounter in everyday life, and encourage them to reflect on how they chose to complete this task, or why they decided to choose this way to complete this task and not that way. Yeah. It is also important to stimulate our students' thinking ability by asking them questions that require logical reasoning and providing evidence. Yeah, some unusual questions and so on. So I usually I like the question, one kind of question that I usually ask at the beginning of the lesson. So I ask such question as, what color is your Wednesday? Yeah, what color is your Thursday? And it makes them think a lot. It makes them use their critical thinking. It makes them reflect not on the material, but on their experience. The experience that they have lived through their day makes them think of their emotions and connect these emotions with the color. So I get such answers as, my Wednesday is red because, I don't know, I bought roses today. Yes, or my Wednesday is yellow because it's sunny, the weather is wonderful, or it's black because I failed the test, and so on. So this is about reflecting on our emotions. Next, it's important to guide our students through their thought process by providing some helpful explanations. It's about guided discoveries that can be used to reflect upon grammar, vocabulary topics that they have learned, to reflect about their learning experience. You can ask some concept checking questions, some instruction checking questions, to prompt them, to elicit information from them. Yeah, it's also important to expose our students to different points of view by creating intellectually diverse groups and encouraging group activities. What I mean is that when you put weak students with weak students, there is a high chance that that this reflection process won't be as successful as you would like it to be, because sometimes they don't have enough knowledge. Yes, especially when it comes reflecting on the material, on what they have succeeded in. So they need some assistance. That's why it's better to use intellectually diverse groups and pair stronger students with weaker students. Yeah, in order for the stronger students to assist weaker students. And try to encourage students to write down their opinions on various matters. Ask them to give logical reasons for why they have these opinions. Yeah, why they ask them to acknowledge opposite viewpoints. Yeah, and ask them to look for the weaknesses in their own arguments. Yeah, ask them to evaluate their own opinion. Okay, and it's also important to anticipate some problems that we as teachers might face while conducting a reflective activity. So let's look at these problems. So the first one is time, as I have already mentioned before. So if we let our students leave our classroom without time to reflect upon their learning, it means that we have missed an opportunity. And I think that you understand that when students come home, they won't reflect on anything. They will just forget about anything. That is a perfect example that I have provided before with Sophia, yes, and her different experiences, but there is no reflection on these experiences. And as such, these experiences are useless because she doesn't reflect on them, she doesn't analyze them, she doesn't know what she needs to work on, and so on. So it's important to find time at the lesson to reflect, to give time to our students to reflect upon their learning experience. The next one is modeling. So let's answer this question. When do our students see adults, especially us teachers, reflecting on their learning? Do your students see how you reflect on your learning process or on your teaching process? If the answer is almost never, how do you think they will be able to do it themselves if they don't have any example, if they don't know how to do it? Yeah. So if we go back to the beginning of this webinar and recall these tasks that I gave to you to reflect upon your teaching experience, you might have noticed that I provided examples. I talked about myself, and then I asked you to talk about yourself. So you knew what you were supposed to do, in which way you were supposed to conduct the task, what you were supposed to reflect on. If I hadn't provided this example, you would have reflected on everything in general. Yeah, you would have started talking about your life, what you're proud of in your personal life, for example. Yeah, so we need to direct our students. We need to provide examples and teach them how to reflect. So the next one is about routines. So if we don't have routines for reflective practice, but we do have routines for putting our backs on a hook, do we truly value reflection? Is it really that important if we do not introduce it into our lesson on daily basis? No, it's not, but it is important. So we need to make it a routine and do it every time at the end or the beginning of the lesson. It depends on you, your aims, and your group. Yeah, but you need to do it on a daily basis, and after some period of time, your students will be doing it automatically because they know that at the end of the class they need to analyze what they liked, what they didn't like, what was the best moment in this lesson, what was the worst moment, what was easy, what was difficult, and so on. So the next one is about language. So our students benefit from learning a language that supports their reflective practice. So if we want our students to reflect and do it correctly, we need to provide some language input. We need to teach them how to do it by providing some sentence prompts. Yeah, I used to think that blah, 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 reflective thinking wasn't that useful, but now I think that I need to practice it and introduce it into my classes, something like that. So the next one is about interactions. If in our interactions with students, we send the message that we seek only correct answers from them, our students' reflections will be shallow and false. So we need to make our students understand that it's okay to share. It's okay to share their misunderstandings. It's okay if their opinion is different from our opinion. That's what reflection is about saying what you think, how you think, and is about expressing. Yeah. And the last one is about environment. And if you teach online, it might not be relevant, but it's more about offline classes, physical classes. So do we have space away from noise and distraction? Are there any calm spaces where individuals might be alone with their thought and reflect? So do you provide the environment for students? So if you give them time to reflect, you might turn on some calm music and ask them to think of the most positive moment that they had during this class, the most interesting task, and so on. But you should set up the right atmosphere. You should prepare the environment. Okay. So these were some general tips on how to introduce reflective thinking. And now let's move on to activities, strategies, and some tasks that we can use. And let's begin with the simplest task. So it's about giving students some sentence starters to talk or write about the topic we want them to reflect upon. So you, for example, you have covered the topic of, past simple, and at the end of the unit or at the end of the lesson, you can introduce these sentence starters, put them in pairs, and let them share their experience, let them reflect on their experience in pairs. I have learned, I'm good at, or the thing I like best about this lesson, yeah? The most boring thing is blah, blah, blah. So now I want you to reflect on your work as a teacher. So can you please choose 3 phrases from the list on my screen and write in chat and reflect upon your experience, what you are good at, what you haven't managed to do, maybe you have some difficulties, or the thing that you like best about your lessons, the most boring thing about your lessons. So let's practice a bit. Let's reflect upon our experience, upon our work as teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay. Waiting for your answers. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. What else? Perhaps there's something that you have learned so far. We've spent almost 45 minutes of the webinar, or you can reflect on your work as a teacher in general. Mm-hmm. What is something that you like best about your lessons? Is there anything that you don't like about your lessons? Yeah, the most interesting thing is debate time. Okay, I agree. So let's spend a few more seconds on this page and then move on to different reflective models. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you may use these sentence starters to introduce reflection in your classes. Yeah, you can find them on the internet, or you can take a screenshot and so on. So let's move on. I would like to introduce different reflective models, and we will begin with the model which is called what, so what, and what now. Does it ring a bell? Have you ever heard of this reflective model? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's something new. So let's take a look at it. So this is a reflective model that consists of 3 stages: what, so what, and now what, and each of these stages stands for a set of questions that we can ask our students or give to our students to reflect upon their experience. So the first stage, what, is about describing the situation, and at this stage we can ask such questions as what happened, what did you learn, what did you do in this task, what did you expect, what was different, what was your reaction. The second stage, called so what, is about analyzing and explaining the experience. So, and here we ask such questions as why does it matter? What are the consequences and meanings of our experiences? How do your experiences link to your academic, professional, or personal development? And here is called now what, and it's about taking actions. It's about thinking of the solutions and what we can do next. So let's take a look. So here we can ask such questions as what are you going to do as a result of your experiences? What will you do differently? And how will you apply what you have learned. Okay, I'm sorry, dear colleagues, I'm back with you. I just had some connection issues, so let's continue. Let me quickly open the slide that we were discussing. Can you please write in chat what was the last thing that you heard from me so that I could start from that moment? I guess we were talking about what, so what, and what now, yeah? So let's take a look. So I stopped at the last stage, which is now what? This is the stage of this reflective model when we prompt our students to think of the actions that they can take, what they can do to improve. Yeah, so we can ask such questions as, what are you going to do as a result of your experiences? What will you do differently? How will you apply what you have learned? So given all these questions, I suggest that we practice. So let's look at the example of a lesson, for example. So your students have just covered the topic about free time activities and present simple. And now at the end of this unit or lesson, you need to conduct a reflective activity, for example, using this reflective model. What, so what, and what now? So you provide them questions, the list of questions, and you give them some time to reflect. But before providing the questions, before asking them to do the task, don't forget to provide examples. So let's anticipate the answers that we can get from our students. So what? The what stage? Imagine that we are students, yeah, and we are reflecting on this topic, and we can get such questions as, I learned how to talk about different free time activities using present simple. I expected that I would use present simple after the first lesson, but I still make mistakes. So it's just describing the situation, yeah? So this is an example that you can provide to your students. The next one, it's about explaining how this topic can be useful in their everyday lives. So this topic is useful because now I can use these phrases to talk about what I usually do in my free time. And the last stage is about taking actions, what we can do to improve. So I still need to practice, and I'm going to try using the words in sentences and talking about my free time. I need to do more exercise to understand present simple better. So you can do a similar task to ask the students to reflect on the topic, but don't forget to provide examples. Now let's move on to the next model created by Gibbs, and it's a cycle of steps that activate our students' reflective thinking skills, and it works well with students of all the levels, yeah? But in order to understand this model better, I suggest that we look at the example. So here is the task. Students have to work in groups and choose a topic and discuss the pluses and minuses, the pros and cons of a particular topic. Then they have to listen to others, agree or disagree. So after your students have done the task, it's time to reflect. To make it successful, to make it efficient, you can create a list of questions based on this model, and you can put them into new pairs and ask them to reflect on the experience, on how they felt, on what they did in this task in new pairs. So we start with the first step, which is the description. We describe the task, the experience that we have, and here we can ask such question as, what topic did you choose? Why did you choose this topic to discuss? Then we move on to talking about our feelings. Yeah, it's the second step. So, and we can ask our students such question as, what did you feel while discussing it? Did you feel thrilled? Did you feel excited? Or bored, and so on. Then we want them to evaluate the task itself. What was good or bad about this experience? Was this task easy or difficult, and why? Then the next step is analysis. We want them to make sense of the situation, to analyze what they did well, what went wrong, and so on. Then the last is kind of a conclusion, yeah? We want them to draw conclusion. So here we can ask such question as, is there something that you didn't discuss, or what else could have you done but you didn't do it? And the last step here is action plan. So and you might ask such question as, what do you need to learn about this topic? What would you do differently next time if you had to do the same task again? So you might create a list of these questions, give them to students, and it can be a follow-up activity after speaking, listening, follow-up activity after the unit, and let them reflect on the task that they have done, especially if it was a writing task, yeah, or if it was a speaking activity or something like this. So, and now I would like to suggest more activities, like more, they are fun activities. So the first one is called Rose Thorn Bud. I adore this activity. That's one of my favorite ones. I conduct it at the beginning of the lesson, but you can do it at the end of the lesson to reflect on the outcome, what they've learned, what they haven't learned, what they still need to learn, and so on. Yeah. You can also introduce reflection score sheet. Give this reflection score sheet to your students and ask them to mark their performance after each task. And after that, put them in pairs and reflect on what they did well, what they didn't do, something like this, what went wrong, and so on. It can be fun, especially it works well with young learners. The next one is word collages, and this activity can be used to reflect upon the vocabulary they have learned, or you can do this task and ask them to use all the words that they can use to describe themselves, or to reflect on their emotional state. You can ask them to read different magazines, cut out the words, and make a collage of the words that describe themselves, that describe how they feel. Or if you don't want to create collages, it can be just a mind map, or it can be a word cloud with the words that describe their well-being. So what I usually do, I ask them at the beginning of the lesson, I ask them to write one noun, one verb, and one adjective that describes their day. So I ask them to reflect using different parts of speech, yeah? Or you can use, just describe your day with 3 words. Choose them from the cloud of the words and describe your day. Describe how you feel. Describe the lesson with these words, yeah? So the next one is time capsule, and it's something aimed at, so at the beginning of the semester, you gather together with your students, you ask them to set goals, to write down their expectations, what they expect from this course, and then at the end of the semester, you ask them to open these time capsules and reflect on what they have achieved, what they haven't achieved, analyze their actions. The next task, it can be simply writing down strengths and challenges, but you should do it in such way in order not to offend your students. So it can be changed in a more interesting and interactive way, in a more fun way. For example, you have just covered topic food, kitchen utensils, and so on, and you want to know whether what they are good at, what they're bad at, if they can make sentences with these words, but you also want to know something about them. So you can make it in such way. You can ask them to write things using target vocabulary, target grammar, strengths and challenges. For example, I know how to cook an omelette, but I cannot, I don't know, bake a cake, or I cannot use a grater. I don't know what a grater is, something like this. Yeah, make it in a fun way. I know how to, I don't know, use a spatula, but I don't know how to use a frying pan or how to cook there. Yeah. Also, try to use a reflection body technique. It means that when you pair up your students to reflect upon a task or a learning experience, try to put them in such pairs in which students feel comfortable. with the people they get along well, they get on well, yeah? So that they can trust, they can open up to this person and share their experience. And of course, don't forget about such fun reflection techniques that you can do at the beginning of the lesson, such as mood scales, charts, and tables that you see on my screen. And that's all that I wanted to present. Perhaps you can share something else. Can you write in chat what other techniques or activities can we use to activate our students' reflective thinking skills? Share, please, in chat. Okay, can you write? Can you share some other ideas in chat? Perhaps there's something that you have already practiced with your students and it worked, and now you're ready to share. Anything. Perhaps it will really work. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now I would like us to finish this webinar by reflecting upon our work again, one more time, our work as teachers. So I will be reading different statements, and I want you to write in chat if it's true or false for you. Yeah, so let's start. I have set up a culture of independent learning. Is it true or false for you? As for me, I think it's true because I always encourage my students to be independent learners, to look up on the internet, the information on the internet, to look up the words in the dictionary, and to act on their own, to be independent. So what about you? Is it true or false? Write in chat. Okay, let's move on to the second one. My question skills are quite good and I use them to elicit answers from students. I would say yes. I always ask ICQs, concept checking questions in order to elicit information, in order to guide them, and so on. What about you? True or false? Good, thanks for your answers. Now, number 3. I always allow students to find the answers to questions themselves. I would say 50-50 because sometimes I can be impatient and I just spill out the answers without giving them time to think. Especially when I'm running short of time and I need to do a lot of tasks. So that's my challenge. That's something I struggle with. So I wouldn't say it's true, and I wouldn't say that it's completely false. So just 50-50. What about you? Let's move on to number 4. I allow students to face the challenge on their own before I step in. So it's closely connected to the third one. So 50-50, I would say, yeah. I provide students with enough time to self-reflect. I try to provide time, but as somebody has mentioned in chat, sometimes it is really complicated and impossible because we have a lot of tasks to do, but we need to find at least time for one task one reflected task. You don't need to reflect after each task, yeah? So I try to encourage the curiosity in students. That's true for me. And I'm ready to work on my weak spots and improve. Yeah. And I guess that it's also true for you, because you have all gathered today to learn something, to work on your weak spots and to improve. So I hope that that's true, that you're ready to develop. Okay, so thanks for your answers. That's it. Thanks for the webinar. I hope that it was useful for you and you will later apply this knowledge with your students. And now let's get back to the certificates. One more time. In order to get this certificate, you need to open the link, which you will receive when the webinar is over. You will see this link at your mailbox. So open the link, complete the test, try to get more than 50 points, and then the certificate will be sent to your email. You can try and complete this test many times, so there is no limit. So if you do it for the first time and you're not satisfied with the result, you can take your time and do it one more time and retake it, yeah? So there is unlimited number of options. You can do it many times and complete the test many times, at any time possible, at any time that is comfortable, suitable for you. Yeah. And for one more thing, for our partners, the certificate is free of charge. For others, you need to pay for the certificate. You can find the payment details at your mailbox. And now I will repeat this information in Ukrainian. Ще трішечки знову порозмовляємо про сертифікат. Тобто, після реєстрації вам повинні були надійти деталі для оплати за сертифікат. Після оплати ви мали надіслати чек, квитанцію або скріншот того, що ви оплатили на цю скриньку. Після закінчення цього вебінару вам буде надіслано посилання на тест. Вам потрібно скласти цей тест, набрати більше 80 та більше балів, і тоді ми вам надішлемо сертифікат. Якщо будуть якісь питання з сертифіката, ви не зможете його завантажити, або якісь інші питання, пишіть на цю скриньку, і ми відповімо на ваші запитання. So that's it. Thanks for taking part in this webinar. And I wish you to have interesting and productive lesson. And I wish you to overcome all of your challenges. Goodbye.